So today we continue chapter 6 of Tanya and conclude chapter 6 of Tanya. So where are we at? Okay, so we met just recapping for a second, you'll see why. The Alter Rebbe introduced us to the second soul, which is the godly soul. And we learned that the godly soul has Eser Bechinot, Eser Sfirot, Eser Kochot, and how they subdivide. In other words, we learned about the architecture of the godly soul. And we learned that the godly soul actually can be even more connected with Hashem in a completely, qualitatively different way, actually, by expressing herself via her levushim, right? Via thought, speech, and deed, via the Torah and mitzvot. In other words, when the neshama steps into expression, right? Steps into Torah and mitzvot, and you understand how I'm using them synonymously? Stepping into Torah and mitzvot is the same as stepping into her levushim, right? The neshama is actually closer to Hashem. Hey, Shia. And then we went to started to learn this chapter about the animal souls. The Alter Rebbe told us, Ze leumat ze, right? This versus that. There's a parallel, there's a perfect equilibrium in the world between good and its opposite. And so the neshama, the nefesh eloki on the one hand, and the nefesh bahami, that has similar potential, similar architecture, if not the same, right? It's a little bit different, but very similar. And therefore, we would expect, and we'll see that it's true, that also when the Nefesh Bahami engarbs herself in the Levushim, she is also going to be more disconnected. Just like the Nefesh Eloki is more connected when she's engarbed in her Levushim, when she's expressing herself, when she's engaging Torah and Mitzvot, the Nefesh Bahami is more disconnected, right? It's going to be lower than her intrinsic state as she expresses herself in thought, speech, and deed of klipa. The neshama, the nefesh eloki, is expressing herself in thought, speech, and deed of kedusha, and the nefesh ba'ami, the animal soul, is expressing herself via thought, speech, and deed of klipa. Okay, so what is klipa and what is kedusha? As we started to define yesterday, klipa is the opposite of kedusha. Right? That's our very broad, general, and also very specific definition. Because we said that the Zohar refers to klipa as sitra achra. Because what is klipa? Anything that is the other side. Anything that isn't kedusha. Like, define for me darkness. Right? Darkness is where it's not light. A similar kind of definition. What is klipa? Not kedusha. So what is kedusha? Right, what is Kedusha? So we did this yesterday as well. Kedusha, if we want to just use a Hebrew term, a popular term, right? We could throw it around easily. To actually do the work is more difficult, right? But what is the word that defines Kedusha? Bitul. Bitul. What does Bitul essentially mean? Bitul, right? What does it essentially mean? Getting out of the way, right? Bitul is getting out of the way. Surrender. Being in surrender. Surrendering. Right? Getting out of the way, meaning being a kli, being a vessel, being transparent to Hashem's will. That is bitul. That is the property of Kedusha. The soul steps into her garment, steps into Torah and mitzvot. She's engaging Kedusha. She is reflecting, revealing Hashem's presence in this world by acting through bitul. Right? When a person is expressing their neshama, right? In other words, engaging Torah and mitzvot, right? I am in bitul, right? I am putting my ego aside. I am now a vessel to reflect Hashem's presence, right? As I acknowledge Hashem, as I say, yeah, Hashem has a will, Hashem wants something from me, and I'm going to fulfill what He wants. In other words, my neshama is manifesting herself. I am bitul. I am a vessel for Hashem. Hashem is able to be present within me, within my actions. On the other side, the animal soul, right? She is reflecting, it's also she, right? Soul. I think. I don't know. The animal soul, when it is engarbed, in other words, when I am acting with Sitra Achra, to the force of Sitra Achra, manifesting Kalipa, God forbid, I am in the opposite mode of being. I am not in Bitul, right? I am not a vessel to reflect Hashem, to reveal Hashem, rather to deny Hashem, right? It's one or the other. Either I am in surrender to Hashem's will, or I am feeding and expressing my independence, right? My sense of self, my preservation of self, my self-interest. Make sense? Questions? Anybody want to paraphrase?
Yeah. And in terms of it being sometimes, border.
So instead of being what?
It's borderline. We assume that it's the negative, or that's where we study Tanya.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that came up yesterday is that there is no spiritually neutral zone. Right? Basically what this means is that there is no spiritually neutral zone. Because when the Alter Rebbe says, what is Kripa? Everything under the sun. Everything mundane that isn't Kedusha. Whenever we're not actively a vessel, transparent, in surrender, reflecting Hashem's presence, right, in appreciation of Hashem's existence and in fulfillment of His will, we are actualizing the Klipa side. And so, again, holding on to the idea of the parallel potential and structure of the godly side and the animal side, when the animal soul is expressing Kalipa, she is also, I think it's she, I'm going to keep saying she unless someone corrects me. She is also now a chariot. Okay, we'll hold that word. She is also being driven by, or what's she riding? Sorry, I'm going to say it differently. She is also getting a downgrade, but it's the opposite. The godly soul is getting an upgrade, if you will, right? When she's in her lebushim, when she's expressing herself, she's more connected to Hashem. When the animal soul is actually expressing itself, it's now more disconnected from Hashem. Right? So in both cases, there's a shift. In one case, it's better. In one case, it's worse. Right? But there's an intensification of the point of potential, of the Kedusha or the Klipa. Why? Because there's Klipa and there's Klipa. Okay? So just like we saw on the one side, there's the Neshama. The Neshama is a piece of God. But there's a piece of God and there's God Himself. Right? So here, it's a little bit different. So there's the Nefesh Bahami, which is one kind of Klipa. And then there's manifesting, the animal soul. And the points of manifestation, the opportunities, the ways in which the animal soul is going to express herself, those are a worse kind of klipa. Okay? You get the general concept? There's klipa and there's klipa. So today we're going to learn about klipa. And the two general categories, it's already a little bit familiar because we know that we've highlighted that the animal soul is what's called klipat noga, right? Klipat noga. We'll see it inside in a minute. So it's klipat noga, the animal soul of the Jew, and not the other kind of klipa. Okay, so we're going to learn about this greater spectrum of klipa. We said, what is klipa? It's not kedusha, right? But within klipa, there's various opportunities. There's different levels.
Should I give you the way of the two words in English? The different opportunities? Helpful or no?
Yeah. Thank you.
Are klipa and tuma synonymous?
Good question. They're for sure highly related. And I imagine there's an overlap. I don't know if it's much synonymous in the same way that Kedusha and Tahara are not synonymous. Hi, Hannah. Right? So Tahara and Tuma would go together. Purity and impurity. And holy and unholy would go together. There's an overlap, but I don't know if they're synonymous. But I can't do better than that this minute. When there is no more Tuma in the world, there's also no more Klipa in the world. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of yesterday's Tanya, we were working on the defining Kedusha. We said anything that is batel, anything that is a vessel that can be transparent to Hashem's light. In other words, revealing the fact that there is God in this world. And again, there's many levels to being transparent to Hashem. To what extent are you God manifesting Hashem's light, right? We can step into Torah and mitzvot a little bit, a lot, with kavana, without kavana, right? How we show up is also, reflecting how much of a God's light we are shining. But the point is that we're a kli, we're a vessel, and we're shining Hashem's light through us. There's a transparency. There's bitul. There's surrender. Another review point, right? We said that there's the angels that are actively in surrender, and then there's the Jew, who is always potentially in surrender. The Jew always has the potential, because of the godly soul. You look very cute, Chana, with that hat. To actively be in b'mesirut nefesh, even ad kedei kach, to give up one's life, God forbid, right? And then along those lines is, of course, to not to give up one's life, but to live one's life, right? Like you said, Shira, it's a fine line, which is more difficult, right? So nobody should be tested, but all the time we're tested to live for God, right? That's being in active surrender, right? But even in the moments that we're not, we still have the capacity, the potential, the dormant power to be in surrender, and so that is because the Jew possesses the godly soul, which is kadosh, which is good. Okay. As opposed to the other side of a kol ma she'eino batel etzlo yitbarach, right? Anything that is not actively or potentially in surrender. For example, the animal soul, right? Elahu davar nifrad b'fnei atzmo. So what's the opposite of bitul? Considers itself as if it is a thing separate unto itself. That condition, right? Having this consciousness, this self-consciousness of separateness, of klipa, meaning shellness, bless you, right? Not the core, not appreciating the true essence, which is godliness, but rather being preoccupied with the lack of the fruit, right? The lack of Hashem's presence. That consideration, that headspace, whether it's a headspace and a heart space, meaning a consciousness, or tachlis, just the energy of a thing, as we'll go on to see. This entity is klipa, meaning it does not receive its life from the holiness of God. So in other words, that which is kadosh, in other words, which has bitul, which is a vessel for Hashem's light, is receiving its light from God. We're adding another point here. And that which doesn't, that which is blocking, right, deflecting Hashem's light, not manifesting Hashem's light, is not receiving its light from God. Now, if you want, you can ask a very obvious question. What do you mean not receiving its light from God? Right? This is not dualism. There aren't two powers, God forbid, the light of goodness and the light of darkness, or light and evil, good and good, right? What does it mean it's not receiving its light from Hashem?
Is there like two personas in us, like there's an animalistic part of the heart,
absolutely,
and there's a godly part.
Right, absolutely. And these are the two souls, right? What we call the godly soul and the animal soul.
But the animal soul can be connected to God if it's doing it in the mind.
Okay.
May 11's blessed.
I saw that you asked me.
So, nachon. We're talking, very good, right? So we spoke about the godly soul, and now we're talking about the animal soul, and we're saying that the animal soul and all of these things that, the garments that the animal soul steps into, meaning how it expresses itself through, again, we're going to be very specific in a minute, through thought, speech, and deed that are unholy, right? Which is everything under the sun, even everything mundane, that doesn't have the Kedusha quality, that doesn't have bitul, transparency to God, right? This whole experience, this whole existence is not getting its life from Hashem. So what does that mean? Atabi right away is going to tell us. Don't think it's not getting its life from Hashem. As a blatant statement. What do we mean? בבחינת פנימית הקדושה ומהותה ועצמותה בכבודה ובעצמה. אלא בבחינת אחוריים. So what we're learning is that Hashem manifests his light and energy in two general ways. The one way we can say about it that light and energy is coming from Hashem. And the other way we can say about it that light and energy is not coming from Hashem. But they're both coming from Hashem. It's just two different ways. So what are the two different ways? Right? Basically we have the pinimi from the face, from the front, or from, the opposite is the back. Okay, so when Hashem shines his light from his face, again, obviously, so to speak, right? It's a metaphor. What's the metaphor? To describe an inner sharing, a sharing from the inside. Sharing from the inside is with love. Well, let's just ask ourselves a question. Can we imagine being with somebody who we're really happy with them, right? They find favor in our eyes. They're desirous to us. A friend, a loved one, even a stranger, perhaps, right? And then imagine, right, that there's somebody, God forbid, we shouldn't have such relationships with somebody who they met, even, God forbid, the people who just, because of them, we had to go into there was a siren last night, Yeah.
It was 4 in the morning.
That's okay.
It was 4 o'clock this morning.
That's good. You didn't lose sleep. I lost sleep.
I've been up since.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. It's cool, right? Even Hashem controls even those details. Who's going to have to get woken up in the middle of the night? Who's going to sleep through it? So one of those people, you encounter them and you're not happy that they're around, right? We don't like him. He's not desirous to me. So my friend, my loved one, when I see them, I look at them with my face, right? I look at them and I smile at them, right? There's an inner connection. I want to be in relationship with this person. And somebody who I'm around who they're not serving me, right? They're not desirous. We'll go on in a second to clarify what we mean by that. I'm not going to give them my face. I'm not going to give them my smile, right? I'm going to give them my backside. I'm giving, okay, so now we have to take the mashal up a notch, right? Hashem is giving the klipa because, as we said, nothing can exist if not for it having light and energy of God, because there is no other source of life other than Hashem. The question is this object, energy, Hashem's end desire, or is it just a means to an end? If it's something, right, that Hashem wants in and of itself, then that relationship is one of an inner, frontal sharing, frontal giving. When Hashem gives from his inside, the light and the energy that Hashem is bestowing is more pnimi, meaning it's more qualitatively and quantitatively meaningful, powerful, as opposed to the energy and light that comes from the backside is a lot less potent, a lot less reflective of Hashem.
Is that called Sitra Achra?
Ken. Yeah. I'm not sure. No, I don't think it's kashor to the backside, but maybe. Yeah, no, I don't think so. But
is
the other side.
but it means that it's a very negative. Like,
Ken, it's
horror.
a synonym for kalipa.
Yeah.
It's a synonym for klipa, and it means the other side. Anything that is not of kedusha is sitra achar, is klipa, is the other side. What does relate to this term is elokim acherim, other gods. We'll learn it later, right? Other gods. It's gods that are getting their energy right from the backside.
Oh, okay.
I think, if I remember correctly, we'll see. I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons. Alter Rebbe gives us a few reasons why they're called in the Torah, right? Why the Torah refers to. But don't write it down now, it's later. Okay. So
It's interesting you say Elohim.
exactly, which is what the Alter Rebbe is looking at, right? It's like, why are they called Elokim Achirim?
They're not
Right.
kidding.
So Rashi
They're
says,
called Elohim Achirim.
yeah, it's that's a question. It's a question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Created by somebody.
right. Okay, yeah, we'll leave the discussion, but it's a part of, I feel like it fits into that learning. It's not so far away, I don't think. We're nowhere. Okay, so when the Alter Rebbe tells us that Eino mekaber chayut, right? Everything that is not kedusha, that is not batel, that is deflecting Hashem, that is concealing Hashem by reflect. Like again, it's in proportion. The extent to which, right, we are vessels and reflect Hashem's light, or we are full of ourselves and deflect Hashem's light. You know, it's like a mamasha. It's proportionate. The more you reflect Hashem's light, the more you are undermining your own separateness. The more we manifest our separateness, our independence, the more we're not reflecting Hashem's light. And then Hashem is not present there. And Hashem is not feeding that moment. Hashem is not feeding that entity. Any entity that is not in bitul, that is not reflecting Hashem, is not being fed by Hashem's light. Okay, so not being fed by Hashem's light, not directly, indirectly, from the backside. What's the consequence of the backside light? That it's be'emet, not apparent at all. It's really not apparent.
The backside of that would be a shadow, no?
Manyan, I don't know. It's like an interesting idea, if there's play on that concept. Okay, so when Hashem is giving light to kedusha or kedusha moment, right, and kedusha energy of bitul, experience of bitul, or an entity that reflects Hashem, that light is coming, that sustenance, right, the life of that moment, of that energy, of that person who is manifesting bitul, who is in surrender, getting light from Hashem's inner aspect of holiness, from its very essence and core, right? From the kavod of Hashem, from the glory, from the splendor of Hashem. That is all in the front, the pnimi. So if it's not that, it's b'chinat achorayim, from the back. And the light that comes from the achorayim, from the backside, ki'ilu, right? That doesn't have the frontal potency. Yordim madriga le madriga, rivivot madrigot. Listen to what happens to that backside light. It's already backside, but imagine at the very top of Hishtal Shalut, backside light is also very, very, very full.
I mean, Hashem appeared to Moshe. Yeah, Me'achorayim.
Right. I remember one time my kids got those as a gift, and I think they lasted like 2 minutes in my house until Ima just was like, I don't know where they went. No, I have no idea. They look so innocent until you're like,
Then you realize.
yeah. So that light. So what happens to that light? It descends. Tzimtzum. How many points of descent? Thousands upon thousands. It says here myriads, but Miller gave a much more impressive impressively large number. Tens of thousands, tons of levels of tzimtzum, of constriction. So it starts out as this backside light, right? Not as powerful in its inception, so to speak. And then it descends and is getting more and more and more and more concealed. Right? The light and energy, the Hashem, the brightness, the revelation of Hashem, the presence of Hashem is getting more and more and more concealed. And what's called ila va'alul, cause and effect. V'tzimtzumim rabim, not just cause and effect, but also tzimtzum, different terms for the process that the light undergoes, so to speak. Ila va'alul is a downgrade of the shining of the light and energy, but it's not enough. It's not enough to utterly conceal. Why? You can put this in, it's an important point, just to understand the idea of ila va'alul, which means in English cause and effect, which is one of the processes in Seder Hishtalshut that the light evolves, that cascades along, is called cause and effect, where the light is coming down and one level to a level, right? And then that level of presence of Hashem then becomes the cause of the next level, which is the effect. And then that effect becomes the cause of the next level, which is its effect. And that effect is the cause. So the light is like moving on, and with each level, it gets undermined a little bit. But what we know about this process that's called cause and effect, which again is one of the processes through which Hashem hides himself, won't ever fully conceal Hashem, because the idea is that every effect knows its cause. And so there's always an integrity to the light that is too bright to deny. Even after a million cause and effects, there's still too close a relationship to the original cause, in other words, to Hashem's light. So we also need additional tzimtzumim. Okay?
You say everything you have, there'll always be another half.
Yeah.
There's always, anything that's not zero is not zero.
Right. And so there's a relationship. When there's relationship, there's knowing. There's a point of interaction with the original point. So there's also tzimtzumim malbim. Until the point. Again, we're learning about Hashem's light and energy as it's moving be in the klipot, into those points that are in denial of Hashem, that are only manifesting their own independence. Yes, of course there is Hashem's light there. But at the same time, we can say that they're not getting light from Hashem. Why? Because the light that they're getting is so diminished, right? That it's ki'ilu not existent. Ki'ilu. From the perception of reality. So the light is undermined, ila va'alul, and then to get into the actual klipa, to get into the actual evil thought or evil speech or evil deed, which is again the levushim that the animal soul is putting on, we need another huge, very significant tzimtzum. And now we have light. There's still light, but it's in what's called galut, right? The light is there, but it's trapped to such an extent that it is completely captive, right? It is completely obscured.
Not
So,
accessible.
and also not accessible. Nachon. No.
Sorry, just
Yeah. We haven't defined yet, but you're right. That's good that you're holding that question. Right. If you say that it's if you say and it's inaccessible, then you're talking about tmeot. We're still saying general.
Yeah.
It's in galut. It's enclosed. The light is in galut. It's enclosed there. Within that entity that is seeing itself as separate to Hashem. Again, that entity could be a thought, a word, a deed, a thing in this world, like pig. We'll see. It's still there, obviously, right? Because if it wasn't there, the entity would not exist. As we're going to go on to learn about more later. But it's already appearing here, this idea of the continuous yesh me'ayin, recreation of everything, right? Everything in this world is constantly being created, something from nothing. And that creation is Hashem, right? Is Hashem's Soviv Kol Almin. So we have both the Soviv Kol Almin presence in everything, and also Mimale Kol Almin. That, right? Hashem's light as He transcends and is present everywhere, and Hashem's light as He is specifically present in the details of each and everything. Hashem is present in the details of this klipa, but it's totally in galut. This energy and light is totally captive. It's the thing itself is in absolute unawareness of the light and energy that is bringing it into existence, and it's essentially it's a source of light. Yeah, Rifki.
So as it goes down, essentially the light,
Mm-hmm.
to all the 4 worlds.
Yes.
In each world, is there an offshoot light that's the backside, or does it come in only in Asiya?
I believe that there are different tracks. There's the movement of the inner light that's going to come to things that are either kadosh, or another movement of light that is klipat noga. Yeah, moving along through the worlds. Yeah. And klipot tumeot. But the klipot tumeot, interesting that you pointed this out, it's also here, that there only is the presence of klipot tumeot, mamash, as we come to this world. The potential, it's coming along, it's moving in that direction, but the light only is so obscured, right? Such that we can have an entity that absolutely denies Hashem, that is not a vessel whatsoever in this lowest most place. I don't remember where it was explaining it, but it's interesting to read. Good Shabbos. That, and it's just interesting to appreciate that in general about the upper world, like that how energy and light of Hashem manifests in this world, right, is because of what's happening with that, where that light is up there and the movement it's taking, meaning the descents that it's going through. That things show up here much more coarsely and much more crudely than is up there, because there is much more brightness in that space. So to be in denial of Hashem is just not the same kind of option as it is here, where the light of Hashem is obscured.
And also there's the pieces around the Mashiach that look like it's a Chakra. Like Tamar and Yehuda, and there's so many stories where it's hiding in the Satan comes to the world from this place that looks like it's
Yafa, right? Nachon. So we talk about this together, how Dafka it almost has to be that way, because otherwise the these great souls are like the Satan, right, doesn't want to let the great souls, these Mashiach souls through. And so the only way for them to kind of release there's the holding is the Satan to release their watch, is when it looks not kadosh. Yeah.
What was that last point?
Not kadosh, the soul, the soul of Mashiach, right, coming through in these interesting ways, with the roots and with Yehuda and Tamar, the twins that they birth, that are born are the soul of Mashiach. That's the line. It's the line of Mashiach. And what's happening coming through in such an unexpected, questionable kind of way. Yehuda, what's he doing over there? And it's not the only story like that. But I remember learning, and at Rifki also, I remember learning that it's dafka the story needs to play out in this fishy way, this suspicious kind of way, because if it was too obvious that there's holiness going down here, then there's too much resistance up there to let the soul through. But when it looks suspicious, and the Satan's I don't have to worry, I don't have to, I can take a little lunch break now. This is not good, this is not good what's happening here. And then it kind of takes a little nap, and we can flash that soul out. But mysteries, I don't. Okay.
Because it's so high what's happening, you have to conceal it in a dodgy.
Exactly. Yeah. Not whether it's conscious or unconscious. I don't know. We can't. We're not allowed to put ourselves in It's from whose perspective. Hashem is behind the scenes. Making, as we learn. It's in that Tivat Shalom. Right. It's everyone's busy fasting and and they're fasting and in their sackcloth and right, and Yehuda's finding a wife. But like really what's going on here is Mashiach.
To perpetuate.
Yeah. Right, the chayuta, the core, what's it called? The garin, like the bit of the seed.
The dish.
Yeah, mashu.
Remember the word?
Ken, chiyut.
Kernel of
Yeah,
potential.
exactly.
Like a seed that it breaks down, it decomposes before it grows into a plant. So there's the moment when the seed is broken, and it describes what happened in the family. When Yosef was sold, and at that moment of brokenness, then Mashiach comes from that state. So that was, I think, the idea of it.
Wow. And the extremities. Right? There's something in these like points of extremity where like on the surface it seems like all hope is lost. I mean, there's just death. But really there's like a big birthing happening under the surface. Right? And maybe this kashul. It's like it's dafka when it doesn't look good, that there's an opportunity that's somehow, being orchestrated and more possible. Okay, the piece that just connects to the last point. Right? There is, Hashem is in the being of each and every entity, and it's coming into existence. Because if not for Hashem being there, right? It's not for the atzmut of Hashem bringing life, then life wouldn't be brought. Because it's an ongoing, continuous process of existence and re-existence, right? Hashem is constantly recreating the world. So Hashem is in everything. It's just very, very, very concealed. It's in galut. And and that's why this world, meaning it's basically the mainstay of this world, what Rabbi is telling us. Like the world in general is called the world of klipot and sitra achra. That's where we live. Right? That's this terrain. Despite the fact that this world too receives its vitality from God's holiness. We know. We're not denying that. We know, right? We know that everything receives its chayit from Hashem. And yet, it's called a world of klipa and sitra achra. Kilu to say that the source is not Hashem.
I was going to say it back again. Timer.
Ken. Yeah.
Language.
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I think so. Ken. V'lachein kol mas. I don't want to nod my head if I'm not like I want to farбing about it afterwards. V'lachein kol maaseh olam hazeh kashim v'ra'im. And that's why this world, with all its affairs of this world, are severe and evil, and the wicked prevail because it's a world of klipa and sitra achra. That is the state. That is the default state of this world. The dark world. Right?
It's very hard to write that down.
Because we don't want it to be true.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to.
The greatest darkness is just before dawn.
Ken?
Yeah.
Nachon. Varashim govrim bo. And in this world the wicked prevail. Kmo shekatuv be'etz chaim shar min bet sof perek daled. Now in the Haggah, the notes, right, that Rebbe is impressing upon us that Hashem is present within everything. Just like we said before, but now we're taking it in Kabbalistic terminology, that it's not dualism. There is no other alternative source of life for the klipot. It's Hashem, right? And yet it's a world where the klipa and the evil is gover because Hashem is so concealed within it. So how do we see this from the terminology or the perspective of Kabbalah? Because in this world, where we have all this klipa, we also have the Eser Sfirot of Kedusha. It's Olam HaAsiyah. It's one of the four worlds. We have Hashem, the 10 Sfirot, those original Sfirot that our soul is modeling, and also the animal soul is modeling, really, right? So there are those 10 Sfirot in this plane, in the same plane of the klipa. We have the Eser Sfirot of Kedusha. Why is that so clarifying in terms of appreciating that Hashem is here and Hashem is there and Hashem is everywhere? Because if the Eser Sfirot are in Asiyah, then really the Ein Sof is in Asiya, is this lowest plane, right? If the Eser Sfirot are in Asiya, then really the Ein Sof is in Asiya. Why? Because the Eser Sfirot of Asiya evolve from the 10 Sfirot of Yetzirah, and they evolve from the 10 Sfirot of Bria, and they evolve from the 10 Sfirot of Atzilut, which is an enclosement and one with the Ein Sof itself. Okay? So, again, there's a lot of potential, right? It's going to be what we just said in Hebrew. Okay. Ubetoch eser sfirot ha'asiya elu hein eser sfirot ha'yetzira. Ubetochen eser sfirot ha'bria. Ubetochan eser sfirot. Right? It's nested. The sfirot are nested in each other. So you get into the sfirot, you get down here. It's down here. It's true. A 10 sfirot down here don't look the same as they look up there. But the inner core, in essence, Hashem. This is really reflecting the kedusha that is here. So while we say that this world is a world where the klipa is gover, don't think that it's klipa to the exclusion of kedusha. The kedusha is absolutely here in this world as well.
Saying that type of kedusha is also within Sitra Achra.
Yafa. So the way Manas explained it, no. I was also curious. He explained it more that this is the reality of this world as well.
That's in Noga, but not in Sitra Achra.
Yeah, and even more so kedusha. Even more so
God's
kedusha.
presence that's in Sitra Achra, is there a further folding of holiness from Asiya? Is like the transmutation of
The
God's
klipa, in the klipa track.
in Sitra Achra.
Yeah, it gets much worse when it appears when the
After Asiya, keeps going.
so Asiya has like spiritual Asiya and physical Asiya. Physical Asiya is the lowest it gets.
That's the Sitra Achra.
And the Sitra Achra is present throughout, but in this world, Sitra Achra is the energy, right? Is the energy of everything that is not kadosh. So there is Sitra Achra also in the upper worlds. It is looking much worse in this world.
So it's not that this energy is within Sitra Achra. The Sitra Achra is the energy that's not the kedusha.
Sitra Achra is getting its energy not from Hashem.
But also from Hashem.
Right. So what are we saying? What are we saying not from Hashem? Meaning it's from Hashem, but it's so concealed that it's pashut concealed. Hashem is not in it. ובתוך הספרות תסיר אלוהים עשר ספירות יציר בתוכן עשר ספירות דברייה בתוכן עשר ספירות אצילות ובתוכן אור אינסוף ברוך הוא ונמצא אור אינסוף ברוך הוא מלא כל הארץ על הזו התחתונה על ידי התלבשותו בעשר ספירות הארבע עולמות אצילות בריא יציר אסיר. And so, כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים שם מזין פרק ב' ובספר גלגולים פרק כ'. So the Or Ein Sof pervades this entire lowest world by being clothed in the 10 sfirot or the 4 worlds. Atzilut, Bria, Yitzir, and Asir. So maybe that's an answer to your question, Shira. It pervades the entire world. It's here, right? Hashem's Ein Sof is here throughout this world, and also within the klipa, but not, again, the klipa is connecting in through a way that's not obvious at all. Okay. Tov. So the animal soul is Sitra Achra, and it's going to when it is an expression, right? It is engaged in thought, speech, and deed of klipa. That's its movement. It's klipa, and its movement is to klipa. But how is it parallel to the nefesh eloki? That its movement is kedusha, and when it dresses itself in Torah mitzvot, it gets closer to Hashem. How do we see a parallel here with the animal soul? When it's engarbed, it's getting further from Hashem. It seems like kalipa is kalipa. So now the Alter is going to teach us that there's really two different levels of klipa. I'm going to try and do it quickly because we're out of time. The klipot are divided into 2 categories, one lower than the next. Not one better than the next, because there's no better. They're both low. Right? One lower than the next. 2 klipot categories. Hamadrega tachtona, the lowest, is what's called shlosh klipot hatmeot. Shlosh, 3, right? Klipot hatmeot. It's interesting, Chaya, we see the word tmeot here, right? Tameh. It's interesting. Shalosh klipot hatmeot. V'ra'ot legamrei. These are ra'ot, evil, completely evil. What do we mean by evil? That there's no brightness, there's no light accessible at the surface. And, ve'ein behem tov klal, right? It says it right there, and there is no good in it at all. Now we know already, it doesn't mean there's absolutely no good, but they're working definitions. There is light there, but it's so concealed that the working experience is that there is no good there. Okay, and Alter Rebbe brings us a term from the vision of Yecheskel. It says there in the Navi, Ruach se'ara va'anan gadol v'gomer. Says there in his vision that he sees and describes forces that conceal godliness. They are described as a storm wind, a great cloud, and a flaring fire. Just to note, we have wind, rain, cloud, right? Water, and fire, flaring fire. These three elements that Yecheskel perceives, all dark, all concealing Hashem, representing these three holy unclean klipot. Okay, so the source of the idea of the three klipot is in Yecheskel's vision.
But don't those things, all those things mataher?
They're all mitaher.
Fire, precious things, water, like a mikvah, and wind, I don't know.
Yafa. And when we learn in Chassidut that the way that something becomes impure, it has to become purified. We've also seen this together, right? And like in halacha, if something became treif through heat, it has to become purified through heat.
Well, yeah.
Right?
I guess the
And
wind blows away the chaff from the ikar.
right. So yeah, there's a balance. You know, the messes that we make, we're gonna have to figure them out somehow. You know, with the koach of the other side. It's all in parallel. Umehen, okay, so quickly, Manas Freeman elaborated that these three elements, fire, wind, and water, notice we don't have earth, because earth is left out, is not a part of the Tme'ot. I'm going to say it quickly, I'm not going to leave time for questions on this point, that we know that the klipot, right, the emergence of klipot here, be'emet has to do with shviat hakelim, the breaking of the vessels. The tohu lights, very, very high, intense lights of Hashem, that there's too intense for the kelim, shattering, the lights, the vessels fall, right, it falls here and gets entangled in this world, and this is really the essential lights of this world. So that which is higher falls the lowest. So these three elements reflect the ketel, the chokhmah, and the bina of olam hatahu. Okay, this is new for me. I didn't realize those parallels. I'm just sharing them with you. Again, I don't have much more to elaborate, but it's just to note. So Hashem will come together as we continue to learn. Keter, chokhmah, and bina. So high, falls so low. And that's the essential energy of these impure klipot that cannot be elevated directly. Right? Okay. The emotions of Olam HaTohu, the midot of Olam HaTohu, which are not as high as the Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, is Klipat Noga. That's the emotions of the animal soul. That's the emotional space of reality, which is Klipat Noga. Emotions of Tohu. Right? We have Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, and then we have emotions. Right? Zeranpi, emotions. That's the emotions. Right? That's Klipat Noga. Okay, in parentheses. Tov. And earth, right? Earth is not is malchut of Olam HaTohu, as the earth itself is raw material. It's raw material. The inorganic matter is not shalosh klipot hatmeot. Okay, moving on back inside. And so from the shalosh klipot hatmeot mehen nishpaot. From them flow and are derived the souls, nafshot kol umot haolam v'kiyum gufam. We have the souls of the nations of the world and the bodies, right? V'nafshot kol ba'alei chayim atmeim v'asurim b'achila v'kiyum gufam, and the soul and body of everything that is asur to eat, they're not bad, right? It's just this is the source of the energy. The kiyum v'chayut, in fact, we say when a Jew sins, he is worse than the klipot meot. Because we'll see it as we learn, right? Because an animal, a horse, is not bad. Not bad. It's not doing anything wrong. It's just being a horse. Its life source is klipot meot. Right, which is why the kedusha inside is not accessible. V'kiyum v'chayut kol ma'achalot asurot me'atzomeach. And כמו orla ukle hakerem, if you have, if you graft, if you plant close to each other a rimon and an olive tree, those fruits, product of kilayin, is also getting its life and energy from shalosh klipot atmeot. A fruit before it's 3 years old, an etrog, you pick it, it's not yet 3, its energy is klipot meot. But over there the Alter Rebbe doesn't say nefesh, because nefesh represents will, desire, right? The fruit that has a spirit, but it doesn't have a nefesh, meaning it doesn't have a will. Okay, so וכן קיום בחיות כל המעשה, דיבור ומחשבה של כל שעשה לא תעשה וענפן כמו שכתוב שם סוף פרק ה'. And every act that is prohibited, any thought, right? A thought of kfira, denial of God, right? Words of lashon hara, an act of violation of Shabbat, any thought, speech, or deed that is prohibited by the Torah, its existence, right? Its energy is shalosh klipot hatmeot. And so, we have a general answer for our question. The animal soul is klipot noga. So when it puts on garments of prohibition, it is now connecting through shalosh klipot hatmeot, meaning it is a chariot for the impure klipot, as opposed to being noga.
So what's the other category?
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting not to read doesn't, because I guess he mentioned it before. That he told us that the animal soul is from Noga, so here he just gives us that other that we don't have yet. Okay. The fact that our animal soul is Noga is very, very, very critical. First of all, what we're seeing here is that we can step into Tmeot. Right? We can become chariots to the Tmeot. It's that extreme. Right? The possibility of a Jew is so extreme. You can put on the levushim of Torah and mitzvot and be a vehicle to the Ein Sof. Hashem is infinite essence. And you can put in the garments of Shalosh Klipot HaTmeot and be a vehicle to the impure Klipot HaTmeot. Right? We have those extremes, these options. And the animal soul being klipat noga, what that means is that we can also not put on the garments of tmeot. We can also not get dressed in the evil klipot, right? And rather, the animal soul can be refined by the godly soul, as we'll learn, right? It's not tragic. Right, it's not a tragic story of doomsday. It's great possibility, great potential, great freedom of choice that we have. Right, Zeh le'umat zeh. Hashem creates the world with perfect balance. We can choose, right, and we can make big, meaningful choices all the time. All the time, we're making great choices. We'll learn next chapter, starting tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, about refining, right? Refining the animal soul. If we didn't have an animal soul, then we couldn't refine. Yeah.
One question. So I just want to understand, you
Yeah.
mentioned a horse is in Klipat Tumot.
Right.
Now is that to say every created thing is in Klipat?